Okay, we're live. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the March meetup for Canada's Technology Triangle.net user group. Today we'll have two speakers. We have Anthony Giretti. He's a Microsoft MVP for Developer Technologies.
Hello,
He'll be
Callum.
speaking about doing an introduction on .NET 6 and .NET 7 preview. And then the second half, myself, I'm a Microsoft MVP in Azure. I'll be speaking on what's new in .NET 6, specifically in Azure Functions. So we just have a little housekeeping to go through first. Usually we do these things in person. Hopefully we'll do that later this year. So your CTTDNUG organizer. So you have myself, Callon Campbell, and we have Roy Kim. Roy, I need a picture from you, but last time. So we have Roy. He is there, trust me. So we're your organizers for the user group. So feel free to reach out to us anytime if you have topics or questions or want to speak. We also have a code of conduct. So the URL is there if you ever want to read it and have a look. I believe this is the whole thing. But yep, we do have a code of conduct. And then if you like to tweet, be sure to follow us at CTTDNUG and include these hashtags when talking about tonight's session. And if you have any questions or make a comment, this is a live YouTube session, so feel free to chat in the window, and one of us will get back to you about that. At the end, anyone that has questions or comments in the YouTube chat, we'll draw your name for some digital swag. I have some I have some stuff I can give away. It just lost me what the name of it is, but I'll mention it after. And I got no upcoming events for next month. So if anyone wants to speak and do this, it's still virtual right now, but feel free to reach out to Roy and I. Happy to have you on. Any topic, as long as it's .NET related, we would love to have you present and talk to the community and share your insights. Okay, so Anthony, I think that's it. So I will pass it on to you.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Anthony Giretti. Nice to meet you all. I'm glad to talk in this user group in Toronto. So I'm from Montreal, and I'm a Canadian and French and Italian software developer. I'm also a Microsoft MVP, and you can follow me on my blog, on Twitter, LinkedIn. You can find my project, open source project on GitHub, and you can find my NuGet packages on NuGet if you want. So what's the topic of the day? I will introduce you today .NET 6, and I won't talk about .NET 7 a lot. I will give you resources to install instead the previews. Microsoft has already released 2 previews, and there are great things to test. So we'll be able to test it. It's fun. So in introduction, I will tell you a bit the story about .NET. Before jumping in .NET 6 and 7, let's go back to some history. Why? Because it might be confusing for some people. First, the first version of the .NET framework has been released in 2002, and it was only running on Windows. It's not really true, because after some years, Docker happened in developer lives, and it has been able to make run .NET on other systems because Docker. The latest .NET framework is .NET 4.8, and it doesn't have any end offline known so far, because it ships with Windows Server and Windows Home Family, etc., by default, and Microsoft hasn't defined any end of life. So it's still there for a while. Then in 2016, .NET Core appeared, and what was the purpose of .NET Core is to make a .NET framework running on any platforms. So it was a great challenge for Microsoft. They released .NET 1, .NET Core 1, 2, and 3. And once they are done with the multi-platform capability, they decided to move further by changing the .NET naming and take a new turn on the .NET history. Just before talking about the .NET 5, .NET 6, and .NET 7 multi-platform and unification frameworks, just keep in mind that the latest .NET Core version, which is .NET Core 3.1, will fall in end of life in 2022, so this year. So I really encourage you to move on .NET 6, not .NET 5, because I will show you right after. It's not a non-LTS version of .NET, and it's an unfinished version of .NET 6. So we can say .NET 6 is the real .NET 5. Why I'm saying that? Because Microsoft delayed a lot of feature with .NET 5 because pandemic, and the real new turn of the multi-platform and unification capability is .NET 6. And .NET 7 will be the next step. So .NET 6, as I said, is LTS, a long-term services, and will end of life in 2024. So just to understand the release cadence, every year since .NET 5, Microsoft will release a major version of .NET. Microsoft hasn't called .NET 4 or .NET Core 4 to avoid confusion with the .NET framework, which is named .NET Framework 4.8. So to avoid any confusion, they move directly to .NET 5 or not even .NET Core 4. So every even version, so 6, 7 will be LTS, so maintained for a long time, so long-term support. And every odd version will be only patched during 18 months. So if you are on .NET 5, I suggest you to move on .NET 6 because its end of life is on May. I don't exactly know the date, but this May, so very soon. Okay. So what we can do with .NET, as I said before, since .NET 5, the definition of .NET is multi-platform and unification. So we can do quite anything with .NET. So desktop application, web application, cloud computing, mobile, but this is not really true because Xamarin hasn't disappeared yet because it's supposed to be replaced by MAUI, but MAUI is not available yet, and it has been delayed since .NET 5. I checked today, the latest version of MAUI is MAUI Preview 14, so it's still on preview. Will it be released on .NET 6? Will it be released on .NET 7? On both? We don't know yet. Gaming, also IoT and AI. So it's a very, very complete framework and allows you to build anything. Before talking about .NET 6, Let's talk a bit about .NET 5. Why? Because, like I said, .NET 6 is the final version of .NET 5, and .NET 5 is a preview of .NET 6. They start to clean up all the repositories. There were multiple repositories on GitHub. They decided to merge them for the runtime, so they have a cleaner code base for the runtime. Same for ASP.NET Core. They merge their own repositories, and the ASP.NET Core, the .NET Foundation repositories too in the same repository. And regarding the SDK, they merge the code base, they merge and clean up the code base for the SDK and CLI repositories. So a great improvement because it was a mess, if we could say that. But it's not enough. Major improvement were performance. Performance is a garbage collector has had many improvements. So the memory management has been improved. Regarding ASP.NET Core, HTTP1 and HTTP2 were more performant too. The code executes very faster because the intermediate language has been improved because the JIT compiler has been enhanced. It runs also faster on ARM64 processors. And if you are using Docker containers, etc., it runs faster at least at the startup because they clean up also Docker images. C# got a lot of new features, very interesting. We haven't seen that for a while because with .NET 8 and C# 8 and C# 7, we had some great improvement, but C# 9 is very consequent, such as records and immutability, for example, pattern matching improvement, attribute on local function. So yeah, they brought attributes on local function, and static anonymous function. You can also define static anonymous function. Great improvement. So what happened in .NET 6? So it's a continuation of .NET 5. .NET 6, I'm sorry, there is a mistake there. It's working only with Visual Studio 2022 and not Visual Studio 22. I mean, so except for Mac, you can use use .NET 6 SDK on Visual Studio 2019. It's an exception for Macs. So they brought hot reload. Hot reload is the capability of reloading the app while you are coding. I would have loved to make you a demo, but I will explain you why at the end. I haven't been able to because of bug. So hot reload is available on desktop app, ASP.NET Core, and MAUI. C# 10 and F# 6 are the new language brought by .NET 6. I will make some demo after of C# 10. ASP.NET Core 6, obviously. We have link improvement and a new version of Entity Framework, which is named Entity Framework 6. AOT compilation on Blazor too, so ahead of time versus just-in-time GAT. Very interesting because compilation is available ahead of time with Blazor. It was not the case on .NET 5. It was supposed to be released with .NET 5 too. It hasn't been. I will show you how to enable ahead of time compilation at the end. Diagnostic improvements, so .NET Monitor and OpenTelemetry has been enhanced too. Regarding MyOE, as I said, Xamarin is supposed to be replaced by MyOE, but MyOE is still on preview, so we don't know yet what's going on. There is a link there that you can visit anytime, and much more. So I won't go in details. This is only an intro of .NET 6. I will make new talks in a few weeks to discuss more precisely about ASP.NET Core 6, Entity Framework Core 6, or Blazor. So what about ASP.NET Core 6? The greatest feature is the minimal API. This is the ability to create JSON endpoint, API endpoint, instead of creating a web API. You'll see a little demo after. Very convenient, I love them. Another great feature is the possibility to stream JSON. Very interesting for performances. I will show you a demo too. Microsoft is bringing a new HTTP protocol. It's HTTP3 named Quick, but it's still in preview. I won't make any demo for this, but it works as HTTP1 or HTTP2 HTTP client. You simply need to choose HTTP3 as protocol and enable on server side HTTP3 on your configuration. So it's quite the same. And another great improvement, it consumes 50% less memory than .NET 5 and not versus .NET Core 3.1, so it's very important. And it's 30% faster than .NET 5 and 50% faster than .NET Core 3.1. This is amazing. So regarding C#10, we will go through some demo right after. We have a new feature named Global Using. So you can declare once in a single project a using statement, and you don't need anymore to repeat the same using. For example, system.link on each file you are in any C# file which uses the same assembly, for example, system.link. File scope namespace, we can reduce the line of code, brackets, opening and closing brackets on namespaces are not mandatory anymore. Improve top-level programs. We don't need anymore any startup file, and now you can write anything you want in your program CS file, but it already exists in .NET 5, but you don't need anymore any brackets, etc., etc. So it's an improvement of the .NET 5 feature. So it's only improved. I forgot Reconstruct. So if C#9 in .NET 5 brought record classes, we have record struct on .NET 6, which bring immutability to and primary constructor on struct. We have a new feature which wasn't allowed in previous language in C#, parameterless constructor for structs, interesting, and extended property patterns. So we have the possibility reduce some pieces of code when you try to make some statement and testing some properties. We can have shortcut on very long object. I will show you to make some if, for example, statement. Just before a quick demo of C# 10 and ASP.NET Core 6, I will simply show you the resources you can go through for .NET 7. So you can download .NET 7 SDK right here. It's in preview 2, but .NET 7 is also available on in the .NET 6 SDK, and you have to download at minimum the version 6.0.200. So yeah, you can have, for example, C# 10 feature, but you have to add in your project CCSproj the preview tag, XML tag. So you don't need with .NET 7 SDK, but if you are using .NET 6 SDK, enable the preview feature on your CSproj. But keep in mind, it's only a preview. For example, C# 10 won't be available on .NET 6. It's only in the preview SDK. In preview in the .NET 6 SDK, sorry. And it requires Visual Studio 2022, sorry for the mistake again, version 17.1. Here are some links if you want to browse .NET 7 preview, ASP.NET Core 7 previews, or even C# 11. So that's it. Let's go to a quick demo now. So,
oh, Anthony, before you move on, there was a question from someone.
Yeah.
It's at the bottom of the screen. So from Alex, is minimal API only for small backend, so less than 10 endpoint service, or could it be used for more complex APIs?
So hello, Alex. Thank you for your question. So you can do whatever you want. For the reason, it will work. So it depends on if you want to have a clean app or not. But keep in mind, if you are using minimal API with, for example, 30 endpoints, try to not declare on code all your endpoint in the program.cs. So I strongly recommend to create files which declare delegates, because as you may know, the endpoint is declared as a delegate. So right here, for example, I cannot. So yeah, I can, it works. As you can see here, it's a delegate. I suggest you to create an external file to declare in a static class your delegate. So you will have a cleaner program, program.cs. If you have 3 endpoints, no problem, you can code them in the program.cs. But if you have a lot, like a web API with controllers, etc., to make it cleaner, write your action, your delegates in another file. Another question? I don't think so.
Nope, no more questions yet.
So let's go for the demo.
I'll let you know.
So first, I want to introduce you not only minimal APIs, but also streaming APIs. So what you see there, streaming JSON will work with an MVC app, a Razor app, a web API, or a minimal API. As long as you expose a JSON, it simply uses behind the scenes the high async enumerable, which is a new feature of .NET 6. Okay, so this is the example of David Fowler. You can stream that time, etc., etc. But this is not my demo. I made my own demo. And as you can see, I created my own minimal APIs, which also support async. Right here, it supports natively injection dependency. You have to define for sure your interface and class there, your DB context, etc., etc. So this is the top-level program statement in .NET 6. As you can see, it takes some less line of code than the .NET 5 top-level program. So with only that file, I can expose one endpoint. It's great, isn't it? So I have enabled CORS rules because I don't want to use it only in a browser, but on, for example, SPA, such as Angular, any JavaScript or TypeScript client. So in my example there, I have a service that returns an async enumerable of a country model. So an ID, a name, and a description of a country to show you the streaming feature. I added a delay of 500 milliseconds per between each item. And I decided for the demo to create a TypeScript client with Angular. Why? Because first, if you use it in a regular HTTP client in C#, you won't take advantage of streaming. Only the network will take advantage of the streaming feature. It will save network bandwidth, but the client will the HTTP client in C# will return to you the complete set of data until it gets the last item. So you won't be able to stream on the HTTP response of the HTTP client in C#. It doesn't work yet, and it's not possible. But it's possible with JavaScript and TypeScript client, and I will show you how. So it won't work if in an Angular context, okay. We will, I'm sure you already know reactive JavaScript, RxJS, and you have probably used observables. Okay, observables won't make streaming work because observable send a notification to as an event to the Angular framework when all data are showing up. So it's the same behavior as the HTTP client in C#. So you won't take advantage of streaming client side if you use observable. What you have to use is a library name. Sorry, it's weird. Oboe. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think it's Oboe.js. If you are using a simple JavaScript client, you simply need to install the Oboe.js package. If you are using TypeScript, you can also take advantage of types. This is the case in Angular. So what I have to do, I'm creating a component, okay, which displays an array, a table of country. I'm configuring my endpoint, which work on get with the get verb, and I decided to not to cache it. What does Oboe.js? It will notify to Angular into the MVVM with the MVVM pattern each item it will receive. So it doesn't work like an observable. What you have to do is on a certain rule. Don't ask me why I need to put that configuration, but this is oboe syntax. If you want to iterate and raise an event and take advantage of the data binding, you have to pass that parameter. If you want to wait for the whole data, once it came up, you have to put a star. So this is a weird syntax, but this says, hey, raise me an event each time you get an item. If you want to wait for everything, only the star. So each time I get an item, I push in my country as array. Okay, so I won't run it in Visual Studio, but I will show you the video. Here you go. Once again, so you can find it on my blogs, on my blog. Its name, ASP.NET Core 6 Streaming JSON Responses with async enumerable example with Angular. So this is a great feature of ASP.NET Core 6. So you really keep in mind, if you cannot take advantage client side, if you are using HTTP client, you will still get network benefits over the network, because it's anyway streamed on the network. You simply can't stream each item and iterate each item once you get the data. But it will come very soon. Let's go now to some features with C#10. I won't go all through my demo there and my blog post. I will introduce you, for example, file scope namespaces. Let's go there. What it is. So before C#10, we used to write a file like this. It was like this before. So we had to add some opening and closing brackets, and now you don't need at all. You can save space and have a cleaner implementation, because you don't, I would say you have less indentation. So for some people like me, it's more elegant to read. Be careful, you cannot add two namespaces. That is the consequences, even with a closing and a closing bracket. You cannot neither nest namespaces as you could before with brackets. So if you expect to nest product into the C#10 demo C#10 namespace, it won't work. You'll have a compilation error. This is it. Another example, Reconstruct. So with C#10, C#9, sorry, we had a new keyword named record. And record are made to intend to make classes immutable in some cases. Okay, with init keyword, or with I forgot. Sorry, I'm losing my positional records, in fact. So the one-line constructors. Sorry. And because they bring C# in C#10 the record keyword construct, I really suggest you to add the keyword class or struct to define explicitly, because you can omit, for example, here, you can omit class or struct, but by default it's a class. So for consistency and cleaner read, I suggest you, if you want to create a record class, add the record class. But if you want a struct, it's mandatory, you have to. So always write record struct or record class. Don't keep it implicit. So for the immutability, it doesn't work like a class. So if you are declaring your struct with init keywords, it won't, unlike classes, it won't make it immutable, because struct have already an immutable feature, simply adding read-only, public read-only struct. So how to make a Reconstruct immutable without using init keyword or using read-only property keyword is to use the primary constructor or the positional record. It's the same thing, positional record or primary constructor. By this way, you are making it immutable. So I wrote it there in red. Using positional record is quite different for Reconstruct, okay? So it doesn't make immutable because it's a struct. You have to add the read-only keyword. Be careful. The with expression is back. It was allowed with the record class in C#9. You can do the same with C#10 on structs. And the equality comparison, it doesn't change anything, since anyways, struct are compared by value because they are value type. So you can use indifferently equal or dot equal. Printing members will serialize your object. If you are using it on a regular struct, you'll have the name, but it's serializing it, I would say, in a more readable way, only if you add Reconstruct. And regarding performance, you can go on this website, but reading Reconstruct are 20 times faster than a regular struct. So it's a great performance improvement. This is it. What I could show you, parameterless constructor is a great feature too. So in C#9, before C#10, parameterless constructor weren't available, and it was not possible to also to add default values. So it's a huge, very huge feature. I'm adding there a lot of example, but what you can see there is allowed in C#10, parameterless constructor, and reusing itself by calling itself. It's valid. Its implementation with this. So this is perfectly valid. This syntax is not valid at all before C#10, etc., etc. So there are some limitation too. You cannot call yourself with the same constructor, because it makes some circular references. This one calling this one, but this one can call this one, but this one doesn't work because I'm implementing an already existing constructor which is calling itself this one. So circular references don't work, etc., etc. Just one more thing in the documentation, Microsoft documentation, there is an error. This line is perfectly valid. So you can define a reconstruct and in it a property. It's perfectly legal, it works. So this is a mistake on the Microsoft documentation. So it's a bit, it's quite long article. You can go back there and read carefully later if you want the complete feature. And maybe a last one. Global using, exactly, my favorite. So don't pay attention to this. When I wrote this article, it was on preview, so you don't need anymore the preview tag to take advantage of global using. So what is the global using? As I said, you can define per project a bunch of namespace you want to import. So you can choose any file you want to declare as global, for example, Microsoft ASP.NET Core hosting, but this is not what I recommend. For example, don't put it in the program.cs. What I recommend is to create a project, a file named global.using. It's cleaner and there is no confusion. If you want to have to add a global namespace, go on that file. So I don't need to declare that file anywhere in the configuration. It's automatically known by the compiler. So you can see my startup is really cleaner. So for those who are wondering why there is still a startup, again, when I wrote that article, the top level program feature enhanced, was not available, and the default behavior was implemented with startup.cs. It has changed at the preview 7 or 8, I don't know, but till preview 7 and 8, .NET 6 and ASP.NET Core 6 were still working with a startup, which is not the case with the final release, as I showed you before. So as you can see, there is only the namespace and any using statements. So you can declare as global once, and that's it. It will compile. Don't forget, you have to do the same. It doesn't work on the global solution. It works per C# project. So this is it. If you want to learn more about C#10, you can browse all my blog posts on C#10 and keep posted on other topics. One more thing, I haven't been able to talk about gRPC 2, which got a lot of improvement in ASP.NET Core 6, but I have the pleasure to introduce you my book, which is available since yesterday in download PDF. The paper book will be available in a bit later. So if you want to learn gRPC with ASP.NET Core 6, you have the great reference there. So that's it. I'm waiting for any question. If you don't have, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. That was amazing. Great talk. If there's any questions for Anthony, we'll take a quick 1 or 2 minute, a couple minutes before we move on to the next topic. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat window. There's a couple comments. One from Jose says, Anthony is always up to date with C#.
Oh, thank you, Jose.
Yeah. And we got Brian here saying he likes these new features.
Me too. And you have only seen a small pieces of all the new features. So just to want to let you know, I will make new talks in the user group. Just send to Callon which topics you want to dive on, such as more topics on ASP.NET Core 6 or gRPC or minimal APIs or whatever. So, and Callon will get me back and ask me which topic you prefer to see in the next few weeks. So thank you again.
Thank you, Anthony. Okay, let me get set up here for myself. Share screen. Stop sharing my screen. I need to share the right screen. Okay, and let's start the slideshow. Beginning. Okay. So welcome everyone. I need to move this window, otherwise I won't see if there's any questions. There we go. Everyone hears me? Anthony, just give a thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so tonight I'll be speaking, just quickly, maybe 30 minutes at most, just do very high level. I'll do a couple demos on .NET 6 in Azure Functions. If there's any questions for Anthony, we'll circle back at the end of my session. Okay. So my name is Callon Campbell. I'm one of the organizers for this user group. I'm a Microsoft MVP, specializing in Azure. I have a developer background, so I know all the stuff that Anthony is talking about. I love .NET, been using it since the beginning. And I love speaking at community events such as this. I have a blog, theflymaverick.com, and my Twitter handle is flying_maverick. And I'm also a co-creator of a tool called Reflect Insights, the .NET live log viewer. Okay, so the agenda, I'm just going to go quickly cover off the Azure Functions roadmap. I'll then talk about different hosting models that are available now. And I'll show you some breaking changes. I'll do a few demos, and then we'll wrap up with Q&A. Okay, so Azure Functions, for those that aren't familiar, it is, here's a quick overview. It's basically code that is based off an event. So it could be an HTTP trigger event. It could be, adding stuff to a storage account or to a storage queue. It could be, triggering off Cosmos DB with the change feed, or maybe event grid. Any kind of event that happens, usually in Azure, you can trigger an Azure function to run on. Azure Functions not limited to .NET, so I'll be just focusing on .NET for my piece tonight, but it supports Java, JavaScript, Node, Python, PHP, PowerShell. I feel like I'm missing something, but there's a whole bunch of them that it supports, so it's not just a .NET thing. So it's event-driven at scale, so you don't need to, it will scale from not running at all to hundreds or thousands of instances, and then back down as needed. So when it says serverless, it doesn't mean that there's no servers. It just means that there's no infrastructure that you need to manage. You can get started with a consumption plan and get a free grant. It actually offers you quite a lot of capabilities for free. But if not, there are two other plans. There is the app service plan. That one just, whatever the cost is of an app service that you have, you just run your functions on that. So there's no additional cost. It won't scale to the same degree as consumption will. And the other one is called the premium plan. So that's kind of the best of both worlds. So you get the scaling of consumption, but you get some of the better hardware, backend infrastructure, and more enterprise-ish features that maybe the app service plan will do. So if you need to talk to a VNet, you want to have warmed instances, stuff like that, the consumption plan is something you want to go with. But if you just have very simple things, you can get started for free with the consumption. Okay, so diving into the Azure Functions .NET roadmap. So there is older than .NET Core 3.1. I'm just going to start with .NET Core 3.1 because that's sort of where this in-process thing will diverge from. So in .NET Core 3.1, we have Azure Functions. It runs on the Azure Functions or runtime v3. It is an in-process, so that means it runs inside the process worker. And so it depends on the host and the .NET version that the host uses. So when .NET 5 came out, that came out as an isolated process because the in-process was still using .NET Core 3.1. So with .NET 5, they introduced a thing called an isolated process. Actually, and from .NET perspective, .NET is pretty much the only one that runs in process. All the other languages were already running in an isolated process model. So what does this mean? It means that you can decouple your .NET process from the host. It means that you don't need to worry about any collisions from what the host is running. You're able to support newer versions of .NET much faster this way. So when .NET 6 or .NET 7 or any of the newer flavors of .NET come out, it can support it day one. And also the language worker and the host are now able to evolve independently of one another. So before, like with .NET Core, they were sort of tied at the hip, right? So you couldn't, the language and the host really relied on what .NET Core was providing, so they couldn't split it out to .NET 5 at that time. So fast forward to last year with .NET Conf back in November, we had .NET 6 released, and on day one, Azure Functions supported both in-process and isolated models right out of the box. All you have to do is, if you're running Azure Function, you can go in inside the portal and just change the runtime that you're using. Change your code, obviously, to support it, but that was pretty much all you had to do. So I'll show you a quick demo of upgrading from 3.1 and 5 to .NET 6. So again, with .NET 6, it supports both models. And going beyond, in the long term, the vision is to have full feature parity for out of process, bringing many of the features that are currently exclusive to the in-process model and having that inside the isolated model. So that is coming with .NET 7, .NET 8. And then .NET 6 will stay on a long-term support release. So that will be supported for quite a while. I don't know how long exactly, but whatever the long-term servicing is for .NET 6, it will be supported. But ideally, what you want to do is you'll probably want to start moving, maybe with .NET 7 when it comes out this November, or .NET 8, start moving towards the isolated process model. Okay, so some of you are probably wondering what's the difference between the two. So which one do I use? So with the in-process, that's currently the .NET 3.1, if you're familiar with that. If you're running the .NET Core 3.1 app, you can just keep running that and move to in-process model when you go to .NET 6. But you might want to stay there if you need durable functions, which provide orchestrations, or if you need to have some of the rich SDKs type bindings, then you want to stay on the in-process. Again, those are some of those features that are still being moved over to the isolated process. With isolated process, that was not previewed, but we initially saw that with .NET 5. So any .NET 5 apps are running already in isolated process. So you can continue to run in that process model when you migrate to .NET 6. And if you need to have durable functions, that's something that's coming to the isolated process later this year. I don't know if they're going to add it into .NET 6 or if it's going to be something that it just comes with .NET 7. But hopefully later this year, we should see that coming. I did post in the chat window when the .NET 3 and .NET 5 expire, or end of support, I should say, not expire, but that is May 5th, I believe, for .NET 5 and December 3rd for .NET 3.1. I don't know if the numbers actually coincide with the version. That would be funny if it did. Okay, so breaking changes when moving to .NET 6. So proxies are no longer supported. Also, I should roll back there a second. So with .NET 6 functions, we now have a new runtime called Function Runtime version 4. So with that version 4 runtime, proxies are no longer supported. So if you're using that, it's recommended to migrate to Azure's API management. Otherwise, you got to stay on 3.1 or 5.0 at this time. But moving to API management is great. It's a great tool. I've done many talks on it before, and I can do another talk on that in this user group in the future. If people are interested, I'll show how to host a web APIs, .NET APIs in it. But it's a really fantastic tool for doing that. Another thing that's broken, if you're logged into Azure Storage using the Azure Web Jobs dashboard, this is no longer supported in 4.0. So they recommend using Application Insights. And also Azure Functions Runtime 4, it also enforces minimum version requirements for certain extensions. So just upgrade to the latest version of any of those extensions that are affected. If you're running in the Linux consumption, default and maximum timeouts are now enforced. Before they weren't. So keep that in mind if you're running on Linux. And function apps that share storage accounts will fail to start if their computed host names are the same. So that's something else that's breaking. So generally, when you create a function app, if you're going to the portal, it will want to create this anonymous name. I'll show you when I do a demo for your storage account. It's always recommended to create a separate storage account for each of these functions. The function app needs a storage account to do just think of it as a black box. It needs to do its own stuff. So don't use it for anything that you need to use. If you need to use an Azure storage account for any of the function bindings, so connecting to storage queues or containers, just create another storage account for those needs. Leave the one that's created with the app, leave it to the function itself for whatever it needs to do. Also, you can remove HTTP client as a registered service because that's now automatically included in .NET 6. There is a full list up on GitHub. Yeah, I didn't think about that when I made the slide. Anyway, I'll provide the slides at the end. I'll put a link to my GitHub account. The slide deck will be in there along with all the code, so you can always go there. If not, just look up, go to the Azure Functions GitHub, look at the issues, and look for breaking changes that have been approved. Okay, demo time. Where do I start? Start with the portal. Okay, so if you're creating an Azure function, I'll just go through portal and I'll show you what changed in that regard. Come on. Let me make a new one. Demo cc meetup. I can spell. Developers can never spell, can we? .NET. Let's see, is that good? Nobody took that good. Function name, I'll do the same thing. So demo cc .NET. So that's going to be my function name. Nobody took that. I'm use code. So I'm going to pick my stack .NET, and by default, it will go to 6. And then I have support for 3.1 as well. So I'll just create this in Cadence Central. I'm not going to bother with the other things. I just want to show you quickly how you go change your function runtime. So I picked 6. I can always downgrade to 3. So this should be quick. Let's see, is there any questions? Questions. Thanks for keeping us up to date with everything in .NET. That is from Carlos. Oh, thank you, Carlos, for the comment. And this should almost be done. Come on. Here we go. Okay, so I have my Azure function that I created. It is configured for .NET 6. I went with the basics for everything. So it is a consumption plan that it's running on. It's running on Windows. And if I want to go change my configuration, so let's say I want to downgrade this to 3.1. I was a little too eager to support 6, or let's say I want to upgrade from 3.1 to 6. Then what you want to do is just go to configuration on the left-hand navigation bar, then go to function runtime settings. So here's where you can change the, well, let me change it, but this is where you could change the runtime version from 4 to 3. And application, I should have done it the other way. I'll come back to this. Demo fail. Anyways, in here, it would specify the .NET platform, and you could change it from 3.1 and upgrade it to 6. So I'll create another one, but first I'll go back to code, and I'll come back to this. Okay, so from Visual Studio, I'm running Visual Studio 2022. I already have my deck lined up, but I'll show you what a new experience looks like if I want to add a function. So I'm going to say add new project. Okay, so I'm going to pick Azure Functions. Call it function app 1. Yeah, that won't conflict with anything. So just give it a name, give it the location where it wants to go. So you can see now for hosting models, I have .NET Framework. So that's like old. I don't use that, but it does exist. You still need to support it. We have .NET Core, which is 3, which is the current long-term support, which is on long-term support, I should say. Then we have .NET 5 isolated. We have .NET 6, and we have .NET 6 isolated. So .NET 6, if it doesn't say isolated, it means the in process. I'm going to change this anonymous, leave that as is. So you can see these are all the traditional bindings that you would get out of the box. So nothing really here changes with .NET 6. One thing I will call out is usually at this HP trigger now with Open API. So I can create that and just show you what that looks like. That was a new extension that they added with the release of .NET 6. You can go and add that in. It's just a NuGet package. If you already have functions, you can backport that. But really nice to add that in. So here's my function app 1 with .NET 6. Most of this should all look the same. My apologies if that wasn't maximized already. Make this a little bigger. There we go. And no, I don't want the one up there. There we go. So we have all this. Everything's the same. What I want to call out is if you go to the project file, you can see the target framework now is .NET 6, 3.1, 6.0, I should say. And the function runtime version is 4.0. We can see here that the extensions for Open API have been added, and the SDK is now 4.01. So I'll minimize that because I don't want to have to deal with the squiggles at this time. So I'll show you this one. This is an in-process function app. Again, looks the same. So very familiar with in-process. Nothing is different how it looks. I will run it. Okay, here comes my output window. And where's my browser? Oh, it's not available. Okay, I already had a function running. My bad. Okay, I'll run that again. There it is. It's starting up. You can see it's running the core tools version 4. If you're in Visual Studio, it will automatically switch between your core tooling from V4 and V3. If you're running inside of VS Code, you just have to go manually do that yourself, as a side note. So it's running. I'll come in and I have this. So I'll put hello, Anthony. You can see it's triggered, and there you go. There's the output of my HTTP function. So hello, Anthony. This is triggered by Azure Function. So that is the current in process, if you're familiar with coming from 3.1, very, very easily. And then this one is the same application, but the isolated model. So it is different. So first thing you'll notice here, it is target framework is 6.0. It's the V4 for the Azure Functions runtime. The output is actually going to be an EXE. And that's really the only difference. It's just going to be the output type. And also the packages that it's referencing now. So you'll notice now that it's got a worker, Microsoft Azure Functions worker. And then we have the extension. So I pulled in the extension for HTTP. And you can see the SDK is slightly different too. So that is the main difference if you're going from between isolated and in process. It's going to be in your project file. Some of the other differences are going to be, if we look at the HTTP function itself, some of the changes are going to, the names are going to be used differently. So instead of HTTP, what's it called? HTTP request, it's now going to be HTTP request data. That is one noticeable difference. We're also not passing in any kind of paths. So in the old one, or 3.1, you had to support, you could pass in custom routing. So that's all gone now because the proxies is gone. So not available. And one thing you have to work around is, so, this is the out-of-box experience that you're going to get when you create a new function. So it is going to pull in, it can read your query parameters on the request. They do not provide that out of the box. So if you do rec, there is no query parameter. So you got to pull it in manually, add in a new space. So a little extra work in that regard, but you do get a lot more capabilities. I feel like I missed a note on some of the things you do get. Yeah, so in the isolated function apps, it provides more control over the function worker process and gives you greater compatibility with libraries and is going to be the preferred model going forward. So my apologies for skipping that note in my slide. Okay, so how do we upgrade if we're going from 3.1 to 5? So I'm going to just ignore all these changes. Okay. Okay, and I do have another branch. I'll check out that branch. So if I have a .NET 5 function app, one of the things that we're going to want to do, find my notes, is we're just going to want to change the target framework to .NET 6 from 5. We're going to want to change the Azure Functions version from V3 to V4. And we're going to want to change over, I should just bring these notes in here. We're going to want to change over and adding these package references from, they weren't there before, and just replace the ones that are there. If you're talking about .NET Core 3.1 project, really all we're doing is changing these two values right here. So just change it to .NET 6 and change it to Azure V4 and upgrade any NuGet packages that you might have already in place. So very, very simple. So you can go to my Git project on GitHub. You can do a diff, compare the two branches, and you can see exactly what I did to change each of them. But that was pretty much all. It was just changing the project reference. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that. Let me see my other notes if I missed something. Okay, one of the other things that's new is in Visual Studio 2022 is that Azure Functions is using something called Azure Write. So they're not using the Azure Storage emulator anymore for emulating your blob, queue, and table service. So this now comes, I don't want to say it comes out of the box, but when you install Visual Studio 2022 with the Azure components, it does come out of the box. But if you're in VS Code, you have to go download it in that regards. For the most part, this does start up. It starts up on these ports. It is a command line tool, so you can go start it, stop it, change the ports, however you like. If you do have other processes that are running on that port, this will not start up, and you will get a weird error when you try running your function app. So usually just go kill the process that's taking up the port is the best way of doing it. I do have a post on my blog that talks about specifically how to do that and how to find out the culprit that is causing that problem. Otherwise, just something to keep in mind. It was sort of a little gotcha. I didn't know it was there, but it is something that they're moving to. So the Azure Storage emulator is deprecated and is being replaced by Azure Write. It's open sourced on GitHub, so feel free to provide them feedback, suggestions, any bug reports. I think that was it for my demos. Changes. We did the portal. Let me do the portal again one more time properly. I feel like it should have gone better. Do I have another one? I probably created those as 6. So. Okay, so while I'm here, I might as well talk about some other things. So you do the option to use Docker container if you want to do it that way. Pull in a container for running your function apps. Otherwise, I'm just going to use code for simplicity. Put it to the same region, kind of central. Hosting. So by default, this is a storage account. It's going to give you some weird named one, some bunch of garbage at the end. Rename it, like give it a, create a new one if you're going through the portal properly, and give it a better name than what they give you. You do have the option of Linux or Windows. Windows is the default. The plan type is consumption. This is the serverless one. The other one is app service. So if you already have an app service, you can just piggyback your functions on that, no additional cost. And then the premium one is sort of the best of both worlds between those two. So I'll leave it as consumption. Networking, I'm going to ignore this right now. Monitoring, you can turn on App Insights if you want, pick the region that you want to deploy it to. I'll ignore that. And then I'll just create this. Okay, so while that comes up, I'll just finish off my slide deck. So basically what we covered is Azure Functions v4 runtime. That's new with .NET 6. We do have 2 hosting models now, in process and isolated. If you're in process right now, you're using durable functions and keep using it, but you can move to .NET 6. Otherwise, start considering looking at the isolated hosting model, because that is the path forward from .NET. We talked about migrating to .NET 6. We talked about some breaking changes, and then also running .NET 6 in Azure. So I'll come back to that in a second. Some more slides. So some further reading. There is a blog post. If you go there to the aka.ms.functionsv4 GA blog, you can get more details about the launch last year. And if you want to get started, go to aka.ms.functions-v4-quick start and follow the tutorial for creating a .NET 6 function app. This is my. If you want to connect with me, here's my details. Send me a DM if you have any questions about .NET 6 functions. More about functions. Send it to me. Anything about .NET, send it to Anthony. Anyways, thank you. That was my talk. And now let's finish up by going to this portal. So here's my function 3.1. Oh, where is it? I feel like I'm missing something. All right. Yeah, drawing a blank. Go figure. Anyways, I will reach back out and show you. Oh, one thing I did want to show that I did miss that I just noticed is when you are running your function, we'll go and do the isolated. I'll show you this quickly. So in your settings file, come on. Okay, so in your settings, you're going to have this functions worker runtime. It's going to say .NET. So that's for the in process. Okay, that will change when you go to the isolated model. And all you're really going to do is, put isolated in your configuration. So if we go back to the portal and I see my configuration, show values, you can see that the runtime is .NET. You can go in and change that and put, you can put .NET -isolated. You can also change the version from 3 and put 4. So anyway, I apologize about the fail. I did something wrong. So my apologies on that. I'll try and follow up maybe in a blog post and have an answer to why that didn't work out of the box. And that's it. Any comments or questions? I don't see anything. I'll bring Anthony back into the stream, just visually, and then audio. Anyone has any questions for Anthony?
Yeah, so I wanted to show something. I forgot. So
okay, I'll put it up.
Okay, this is my demo, Blazor demo. So I simply wanted to show how to increase the speed with AOT compilation. So you simply need to add the tag VR, but I cannot run the app because I have a weird warning because the .NET 7 preview, and I'm absolutely not able to run because the .NET 7 preview 2. So that's why I haven't been further with .NET 7 tonight because it has completely fucked up my Visual Studio. So I cannot do anything. I'm on a .NET 6 project, but it seems to target .NET 7 Preview 2 anyways. So I'm sorry for that. That's it.
Cool. We do have Roy also here. I don't know, Roy, if you have anything to say hi or. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this month's session on .NET 6, 7, and functions. We'll hope to get into a more consistent cadence of having these once a month. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me or Roy. We will, try and facilitate, getting someone in to come speak about that tool or that topic. So I'll give another minute if anyone has any questions before I draw something. Looks like it's between Alex, Carlos, and Brian. We'll be getting a free giveaway. So I got JetBrains. I'll give you a license. Comment. Cool. Okay, with that, let me run the draw And I should share the screen. Not that one. There you go. Carlos, you're the winner.
Lucky you, Carlos. He's my
Carlos.
my right at office. So tomorrow bring me croissant because me, Carlos.
Croissants, I want croissants. There you go, Carlos. You know Anthony, so feel free to reach out. But there's my DM. So just send me a DM on Twitter, and I'll reply back to you, and I'll email you. I just want your email address, and then I'll email you the digital certificate. Okay. Anyways, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It is live streamed to YouTube, so if you need to come back and watch it again, just come back to the CTTDNUG channel on YouTube and take a look. We also have another one from November, was our last one, and that was Roy. He was speaking about monitoring with Azure Kubernetes. So that's the other topic that we have, but we want to keep doing these every month. So that's it. Thank you so much. Anthony, thank you so much. Roy, thank you. Have a good evening. Bye now.
Bye.